Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda and welcome to this video training on the truth behind stimulus check delays in America and why all of these delays are happening and the future of stimulus checks in America. I'm going to go over several important points in this video training, and before I do that, if you're a member of our community, thank you so much for coming back. If you're not a member of our community yet, please go ahead and click subscribe below so you can get instant updates from me. Please also click the notification button so that you can be notified whenever I release a video. And also please click the like button because it helps the YouTube algorithm. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started with all the things that are impacting our stimulus check payments and the future of stimulus check payments in our country. Number one, I'm going to go over the economic structure, the economic architecture of our country. Number two, I'm going to go over why this economic structure fundamentally helps big banks and big businesses more than it helps the average American. Number three, I'm going to go over the economic reality that all the burden of the unemployment insurance claims, the unemployment insurance payouts, all of it falls on the states that are not equipped to handle this kind of load, that are not equipped to handle 30 million Americans who filed unemployment claims and more Americans likely to join the ranks. I'm also going to go over point number four, which is the fact that Congress is not in session right now, and that the Senate, even though the Senate leaders are meeting, they're just in a complete state of gridlock. So we're not really having any progress and we're not having any forward momentum at this moment for new stimulus checks. And more importantly, I'll go over whether I see an immediate solution to this problem and what I think is needed to bring about lasting change. So let's get started with the first point, which is the economic architecture, the economic structure of our country. Now, if you have a credit card, you know that you have a credit card with what's possibly a low limit, a few $100s, maybe a few $1,000s. Did you know that a lot of individuals with business credit cards have limits of $50, $60, even $100,000? Well, that's because the economic structure of our country is designed to favor businesses, to favor banks. So what banks do is that they extend large lines of credit to business owners, to small businesses, to big businesses, whereas the normal American, the normal day-to-day person has to pay a higher interest rate, has to essentially, get lower limits to work with. And this is ironic considering that it is the average American that essentially drives the economy. In fact, more than half of all Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So when we find ourselves in this pandemic, in this situation where a lot of us haven't been paid for several weeks, maybe even several months, a lot of us are still waiting for our stimulus checks, you'll realize that it's getting harder and harder for the average American. But the problem is the economic structure of our country is favoring big banks and is favoring big businesses. Here's the proof. When all of these stimulus bills were announced, a lot of money went through the Paycheck Protection Program, a lot of money went through the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and all of these programs basically helped small and big businesses. You've read a lot of reports about businesses getting tens of millions of dollars in aid. But what's happening to the average American? The average American, a lot of individuals I talk to have still not received their stimulus checks. And the reason for this is the basic architecture of our system is designed to get money as quickly as possible from the Federal Reserve to banks and from banks to small businesses. And now it's up to those small businesses to disseminate that money via paychecks to employees so that employees now have enough money to be able to cover their bills while they're at home. So in the trenches, at the ground level, we need money to pay rent, we need money to buy food, we need money for our utilities, we need money for our day-to-day bills. And the money for all of those things for us, for the average American, comes from our wages, comes from our paycheck. So what happens when the paycheck stops? Well, the money has to come from unemployment, and that unemployment money comes from states. So within our country, there is really no mechanism, there is really no economic mechanism for the federal government to directly send money to the average American. By the way, this is why there's so many stimulus check videos out there on YouTube. There's so many updates about stimulus checks because the federal government, in trying to send stimulus checks to the average American, it's taking a ton of time. A lot of us are still waiting. And then because we haven't gotten a stimulus check, we're trying to get unemployment, and now we have to get unemployment through the state. Now, in all fairness to the federal government, what they have done is they've added the $600 federal booster shot, which means someone on unemployment will get an additional $600 a week up until the end of July. As of this moment, I think that's likely to get extended. And they've also extended that benefit, which is typically at 26 weeks, depends on which state you're in. They've extended that by another 13 weeks. So that's a good thing. But the problem is, because a lot of these mechanisms are driven by state authorities, a lot of us are still waiting for unemployment. Some of us haven't even applied for unemployment because we put our hands up and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm probably going to be waiting, so I'll just, I'm not going to apply right now. So all of these problems actually have occurred because, again, there is no mechanism for the federal government to directly help the day-to-day citizen. On the other hand, businesses have been getting funds, and a lot of businesses I know personally have received funds from the Paycheck Protection Program, from the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Now there's a Main Street lending program that's out there, and more businesses are now getting funding. Although that's a good thing, the question is, what about the average person who needs money to pay their bills? And I can tell you personally, I know how it's like to be hungry, to be homeless, because I've been there. And I can tell you that, again, the way our structure is set up is that it doesn't really send money to the average day-to-day citizen. So again, when there is a reliance on states, and the problem with a lot of states right now is states themselves are overwhelmed. A lot of states are looking for funding from the federal government because a lot of states themselves are upside down with their budget, because states have their own set of responsibilities. They have to, the state has to provide police, the state has to provide firefighters, the state has to pay for schools. All of those things are in a state of complete overwhelm right now because a state itself needs funds in order to run. And when there's no income for the state, then how's the state going to run? So states right now are also seeking benefits, are also seeking money from the federal government. So when you think stimulus checks, remember that your state benefits, your employment comes from your state. So that's where your state benefits come in. But as far as the additional $600 booster shot, the additional 13 weeks of unemployment, that comes from the federal government. So now you have the federal government and the states working to send money to Americans, and number one, they've never had to do that much before. Number two, they've never had to coordinate themselves to that extent before. So again, there are a lot of videos out there on YouTube that talk about daily stimulus check updates, but I think we need to understand the bigger picture and the bigger architecture, and hopefully this can help us understand and deal with the frustration that we're dealing with now, because I understand how everyone is feeling out there. We need money to put food on the table. We need money to pay rent. We need money to pay utilities, and we absolutely need it now. The problem again is our existing structure isn't designed to provide money quickly and definitively and in a precise manner with an exact amount to the average everyday American. That system just doesn't exist at the moment. Do I foresee that changing in the future? Absolutely. I think there are going to be some major reforms that come out of this that allow the federal government and the states to better disseminate money to those who need it the most at a time of crisis like this. But right now, we don't have that solution. In fact, speaking of right now, Congress is not in session yet, and the Senate has actually been meeting. And the problem is, all of this is happening while 30 million Americans are out of work right now. This is how challenging the situation is. An article on CNN says Senate Republicans and House Democrats are at sharp odds over the next relief package, about the size, scope, and policy, even as this pandemic crisis facing the United States is threatening to further drag down the economy and send scores of more Americans into the jobless ranks. And again, with 30 million Americans out of work, we have senators, Republicans and Democrats, that cannot see eye to eye and can't agree on getting the next thing done. It blows my mind. In a sign of the difficulty that any negotiations will face, Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming told CNN Monday there isn't any appetite for another pandemic relief bill like the one envisioned by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, a far-reaching proposal expected to be introduced in the House in days, and that could mirror the new $2 trillion plus stimulus law, which has already been passed. Congressional Democratic leaders have made clear that they view additional funding for cash-strapped state and local governments as a non-negotiable, with Pelosi saying last month there will not be a bill without state and local. So as you can see, different individuals on different sides of the Senate have different priorities. It's like, it's almost like, I think of it this way. America is like a school right now, and all the school children, all the citizens are waiting for food. There's no food in the cafeteria. And here we have the principal and the teachers just arguing about what needs to be done and how the food needs to be brought to the cafeteria. I mean, we just need to get the food out. So what needs to happen is we need more help. We need it fast, and we need them to get together and do something. Something needs to be done as quickly as possible. Again, this goes back to the economic structure that we have, which again is designed to quickly get money to big banks and big companies. It doesn't really favor the average person. That's point number one. Point number two is fundamentally the structure must be able to help the average citizen. Again, it just favors the bigger banks and the bigger businesses. Point number three, all the burden falls on the states. And point number four, at this point, the Congress is not in session and the Senate is gridlocked because both the parties have different priorities. So what happens as a result? As a result, the average American, the average person is just stuck in the middle, waiting. It's frustrating. And I think at some point, I'm sure at some point all of this will be sorted out. But in the meantime, I think a lot of us are just frustrated out there. We need something to happen. I personally refer to this as the collective rage of America. We're frustrated. We're just waiting right now because really there is no other option. And like I mentioned earlier, I personally know how it is to be hungry, how it is to be homeless. So I know how this feels because I've been there at one point in my life. I think that we as Americans, we need to be patient. And I'm sure with our spirit, we'll come out of this on the other side. I know that this doesn't put food on the table. I know this doesn't pay rent, but in life, we have to deal with the cards that we're dealt, and these are the cards that we've been dealt right now. A dysfunctional system at the economic level designed to fundamentally favor big banks, a dysfunctional government at certain levels where they can't agree for continuing ongoing benefits, continuing ongoing stimulus for people who are really, really suffering. I know that there have been changes to unemployment and I know that there have been some added benefits, but a lot of people are still waiting in line. That's number one. Number two, the $1,200 stimulus check is simply not enough. We need more because, a majority of Americans, more than 50% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So $1,200 check simply isn't going to cut it. This is what we need government for. This is where we need solutions to come in. Now, I'm going to talk about whether I think there's an immediate solution to this, and I'm going to talk about what I think is a long-term solution to this. Do I think there's an immediate solution to this? At the moment, with all the uncertainty going on in Congress, in the Senate, and at the moment, if you consider the fact that a lot of senators are concerned about their own health, getting back into DC in order to pursue their functions, which, by the way, they're doing with some amendments to the way they conduct business in the Senate. Given all of those concerns, I would say right now, I personally I do not see an immediate solution simply because of all the things I've mentioned in this video. Long term, I do see a solution. Long term, I do see a reform in several things. I see a reform in the way banking is done. I see changes in the way unemployment benefits are administered. I see faster, larger, and instant payouts in the future if something like this were to ever happen again, as opposed to us, going online and trying to make sure that the IRS has our bank account information and checking the mailbox every day to see if the stimulus check has arrived. That is not America. America is where things happen quickly, and America is where things should happen and will happen for the benefit of its citizens. I am an optimist. I'm not in favor of an approach where we, blame somebody, because again, it's human nature to want to blame somebody in a situation like this, and I get that. But I think we need to be as realistic as possible. Again, we need to just work with the cards, deal with the cards that were dealt, and I'm positive that we'll come out of this stronger on the other side. But in the immediate future, I think that I don't see the Senate agreeing to some sort of a stimulus bill. I don't see more money coming in. I don't see the backlog in the unemployment, state unemployment payouts reducing overnight. I do see it improving gradually, and I'm confident it will. I hope all of you got some value out of this video. If you're a member of my community, thank you for coming back. If you're not a member of our community yet, please subscribe so you get immediate updates. Please click the subscribe button before. Please also click the notification button so you can get immediate updates. Also, please click the like button because it really helps the YouTube algorithm. And I really appreciate you being here. I hope this was valuable. I'm looking forward to your comments below. Thanks so much.